most of the problems we experience in business are people problems. Keeps us busy, Lisa, right?
Thank goodness for people problems.
Indeed. And most of those people problems are communication problems. And most of those communication problems come down to often the misunderstanding of how we like to communicate, our behavioural style. In other words, our behavioural preferences.
Yeah.
How we like to take in information, how we like to communicate information. So in this episode, we're going to explore those differences and try and give ourselves a better understanding of why other people are the way they are.
Yeah.
Do you find some people slightly annoying and others just easy to get on with?
Yeah, and sometimes, some people can be explaining something to you and I just don't get it unless it's a picture, quite frankly.
But we have a large team of facilitators and they've all got different styles.
Yeah, but that's what makes the world go round as
exactly.
well. So
And,
diversity is
we all know
brilliant.
some people we find easier to get on with, and the person you find difficult to get on with, someone find them blissfully easy to get on with.
The temptation is that you end up communicating and not really ever exploring how it's landing or if it's landed or why it hasn't landed if you're getting some challenging response from the other person.
Or worse still, we get frustrated with them,
Yeah.
and we make them wrong so we can be right.
Yes.
The problem is with you is that you want too much detail. Well, the problem is with you is that you're too big picture.
Yeah.
You scant over things. You're too high level. You're not paying attention to the things that are really important, or you're a bit short and to the point.
Yeah.
Or you're too analytical, you ask too many questions, or you're too much chit chat. You just go round and round the houses, discussing things forever, never getting to the point.
Yeah.
And another person is saying, well, you're too up in the air with your ideas. They're not very well thought out. There's no sort of substance to them. You're all sizzle and no substance, etc., etc., etc. And the list goes on, right?
Yeah. And the brilliant thing about this topic is it's not just confined to the workplace. These theories and these same styles and preferences are our own, aren't they? So they pervade
everything.
Home life, work life, with your kids, everything. So
so many times when we cover this subject in a professional setting, the light bulb's going on in someone's head and go, that is why my husband does this or my wife does this. Now it's making a lot more sense.
Yeah.
How can I get her, him, whatever, to do this test? Have you got a way I can test them to try and get them to understand? So it's an exciting subject because we're all different. And there's an old adage, isn't there, back at school, particularly when you're very young, and you're always taught by your teacher, treat others as the way you would like to be treated. Which I get the sentiment, but when it comes to communication, it's actually not quite right. What you want to be doing is treating others as they wish to be treated, because they have different needs and different desires in terms of how you communicate to them.
And we always say, don't we, the meaning of communication is the response.
It gets, yeah.
Not how
you can't be on that
deliver it.
side of an equation where you're blaming everybody for not getting you. They just don't get me. They don't understand me. You want too much of this, or you're not asking the right questions, or in other words, we're blaming other people for being the way they are. In other words, not the same as me.
So we'll explore the different communication styles. There's obviously lots of different frameworks.
To understand a little bit about what you are initially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how you can then understand the styles of those around you. And also then you're going to provide some really simple techniques in order to flex your style to better engage other people.
Absolutely. And, particularly when you're engaging people who are very different to you, I'm sure people listening to this at some point in their life, they've been asked to complete some sort of behavioural tool analysis. Some of those tools provide you with an inordinate amount of knowledge or references about yourself. Pages and pages. Yeah. Martin will be Martin won't get on with these people. Martin will be like this, which is, I always find a little, okay, in one sense, it's kind of like, wow, that's mind-blowing how accurate that actually is. But it's very prescriptive. It's actually saying that's the way you are, when it's not always necessarily true, particularly as you've become more emotionally intelligent. And secondly, it's way more about you and not enough about other people.
Yeah.
I would suggest that when you open up those reports, you are the least surprised person in the room.
Yeah.
Martin has a low attention to detail. No shit, Sherlock. Well, that's amazing. I've lived myself all these years and I never knew that.
Yeah.
Of course you know it. You know what you're like intimately.
Yeah.
The best tools, in my view, are those ones that are more outward looking and enable people to understand more about other people, so that when they're in communication with them, they can recognize those styles and then adapt their style accordingly.
I think some of the tools as well, they're so complicated that they're not memorable, and so they're not practical, and you can't apply them. You know, the ones that we use in our programs, you know, are very simple but very powerful, and we'll explore. And
it's not to dismiss, you know, tools like Myers-Briggs is an incredibly strong, psychologically robust tool.
Absolutely.
It's well thought out. And if you want to have a very deep understanding of behavioural styles and understand your own and why you do what you do, it's very, very good. With 16 different types, I think it becomes increasingly difficult to... Well, one is often when I ask an audience, what do you remember yourself to be? They struggle to remember. And secondly, could you tell me who the person sitting next to you is?
Yeah.
Who you've been working with for a while? No.
Yeah.
How would you adapt your style to them? I don't know.
So you mentioned earlier that some of those other tools focus very much inwardly, you know, on the person. What is the impact in terms of the context and the situation? Are we this type and that person is X type, we're Y type, and that is always the case, or are they situationally flexible?
You're talking about the environment here, right? The environment, yeah. We respond differently based on your different style. For example, you might respond differently based on the different styles to stress.
Yeah.
All right? There are lots of clues there. When you're part of a team, or a team discussion, your roles will vary, your preferences for how you contribute and what information you need will change. When you're working on a project, you're likely to contribute in a slightly, you know, different way. You know, one of the big questions we get asked is, does your style actually stay the same over a period of your life? Does it stay the same or does it vary? I'm personally of the opinion that the two extremes, i.e. your highest and your lowest, stay much the same, whereas perhaps the two in the middle vary a bit. And it's just to clarify there, what we're talking about here is the four major behavioural styles.
Yeah, so there's lots of different labels that are given to them by different companies, but essentially there's four.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about the highest and the lowest, so most of these tools, with the exception of perhaps things like Myers-Briggs, are going to give you a score against four different styles.
Yeah.
And largely, just for the sake of convenience, if you think one particular style, which is often depicted as red colour, fiery red, very directive, sometimes called direct as a name, dominant sometimes. So, get to the point, want to make things happen, always interested in the outcome, very broadly, okay? Factually based quite often.
Yeah.
Then you might have somebody who is more, for example, analytical. It's often depicted as being blue.
Yeah.
Blue energy, highly analytical, detailed, structured, methodical. Those are the kind of words you would associate with that particular style. Third one might be described as amiable, often again depicted as being green. So amiables, generally very empathic, like consensus, good at relationships, diplomatic, so very people orientated.
Yeah.
And then lastly, expressive, sunshine yellow, bright, optimistic, lots of spontaneity, ideas, possibilities, creativity, etc. So just to summarize, And by the way, these styles go back to the original work of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, where he talked about these 4 major behavioral styles. I guess you could, if you were to put them on a kind of axis, and you've got a vertical axis, you might describe as being at the top of the axis would be more of a thinking style.
Yeah.
Right. So more rational thinking. Go down that axis and you've got more feeling. So thinking, feeling is one axis. On the other axis, a horizontal axis, you might describe one on the right being perhaps more outward. Okay. So more extrovert, receiving energy from other people, like being around people, kind of more expressive, outward, extrovert energy. And then loosely on the other side, more conservative, more restrained, perhaps a little bit more introvert, do your thinking on the inside. So if you kind of think about those axes and you would just sort of think, okay, well, roughly where would I be?
Yeah.
You can start to get a sense that if you're on the top right hand of that scale, you're likely to be driver direct.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're more extrovert, more thinking. If you're on the bottom right-hand side of that, 4x4, or 2x2 rather, you're likely to be more expressive. And then top left-hand, so if you imagine the image of this, top left-hand box, more analytical.
Yeah.
So you're more rational and thinking on the inside. And then the bottom left-hand, whilst you're people, you're probably tending to be a little bit more introverted and do your thinking on the inside. So it's not that's very, very rough. It's a very broad. And of course, if you imagine that to be a grid, you could put yourself anywhere in one of those boxes, but you could be right on the outside or on the inside.
Yeah.
So generally, if you're closer towards the center, you're picking up on a lot of those different traits.
You were saying about the top and the bottom and the middle.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily one, although you could be extreme in one. So do we all have elements of all of them?
We do indeed. And into your question earlier, in certain circumstances, we draw on, say you've got a task that requires you to be more analytical. We might tap that part of ourselves for that particular task. But by and large, when you take these evaluations or these assessments, whatever you want to call them, you will tend to have the two that are higher than the other.
Yeah.
And so I'm particularly fond of a tool called TetraMap, which uses earth, air, water, and fire. So earth, think about earth, like a mountain is firm. So that's very kind of direct.
Yeah.
Air, like the wind, is clear. So very rational thinking, which is equivalent to analytical blue.
Yeah.
And then you've got lake. Water, like a lake, is calm, so it's much more focused on people and feelings, which is more associated with the green energy, amiable. And then fire, like the sun, is bright, ideas, possibilities, more associated with yellow and the expressive energy of some of the other tools that are on the market. I think just for the purposes of, I appreciate a number of people listening to this have done these sorts of things before, but just to be clear, let's just go through each of the 4 styles and look at actually perhaps what words we'd use to describe them and what their typical preferences would be. Yeah.
Okay, so starting with driver, the more red energy.
Yeah.
What are some of the preferences of somebody who is a driver element? What's some of the things they might say?
Well, first of all, words like outcome, very focused on the outcome. Why are we doing this? What's the point of this? Direct.
Yeah.
Quite often, more likely to be competitive, much more, one of the exercises we do in the classroom is to say, having people done the little evaluation, we get them to huddle together. We do this little exercise called Loves and Bugs.
Yeah.
And they write up on a flip chart, what do you love? What kind of style of communication do you really enjoy and love? And you guarantee when you get a group of, drivers or direct people together, that red energy, they always put up, get to the point.
Yeah.
Get to the point, no fluffy talk. Why are we doing this? Get to the outcome. Tend to be quite tough-minded.
Fast decision making.
Yeah, fast decision making, exactly.
Yeah.
Fast decision making, and let's not mess about. Results orientated, bold. Those are the kind of key words. So if you're orientated towards that as a preference, then the behaviours that then follow from that tend to be perhaps slightly more impatient.
Yeah.
This is the person in a meeting will say, look, can we just make a decision on this? Or they'll be the person that wants to be much more, they would have a much stronger bias towards action and getting things done and getting to the point. Okay.
But they won't be the person that sets the agenda or, is disciplined in...
Possibly. I mean, depends if that second element is more analytical, there may be. And that's why we have to be, careful here that we are, as you said just now, we are a mixture of all four.
Yeah.
But the two highest preferences tend to shape how we actually show up to people.
Yeah, yeah. So if I was presenting to you or communicating with you as a driver, then what would I need to do to engage you?
Well, tell people why we're having the presentation. What's the point of being here? What outcome are you trying to reach? Get to the point as quickly as you can and then backfill with detail. Don't start with lots of detail and work towards the big point. Get to the point quickly and then start to answer questions that person feels they need.
Yeah.
So that would be the big thing. And just minimise the what they would call sort of fluffy talk.
Yeah. They don't need the frills, they just need the facts.
They need the facts.
Yeah.
It tend to be more factual, logical, and just if you just think about action or future, get it done, make it happen. That's where the driver sits, the direct person sits.
And in contrast to that, should we look at
probably the most contrasting energy would be amiable.
Yeah, amiable.
Amiable, which is again in Insight's tool, which is a very good tool, is shown as green.
So someone that's much more people focused would want to know about the impact it would have on people. They might not want to rush into a decision without considering the impact of what's being done. They might.
Sounds like you know quite a bit about this.
Yeah,
style.
I might do. I'm just speaking on behalf of a very well-known friend. But they would always like to consider everything before they come to a decision. They might find somebody that's a driver energy quite abrupt,
abrasive,
and maybe could be perceived as a little bit rude sometimes. It's a much more sort of gentler, caring type of energy.
Yeah, more consensus driven. Tends of all the four styles tends to be the most empathic.
Yeah.
Good at reading the room, reading the temperature.
Yeah.
Tends to put themselves in other people's shoes. Wants to engage people. Likes to be engaged.
Yeah. Doesn't like to be rushed.
No. And loves context as well. What's the big context? Where do I fit into this?
Yeah.
If you give them a task and you explain to that person how that task fits into the bigger picture, they're much more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But like to be involved. On the flip side of that, if they were, I tend to ask this question: if they're overplaying that strength, how might they be perceived by other people? And other people would say they tend to be a little bit perhaps slower in their decision making.
Hesitant,
exactly.
Yeah.
Hesitant, yeah. Careful, considered, perhaps a little bit people pleasing might go in there. Again, these aren't necessarily truisms, but they are perceptions held by other people who hold a very different view of the world.
Yeah.
So, an amiable is much more likely to see someone who is very direct as being a little bit abrasive, and the more direct individual would see the green amiable as being
a bit soft
and a bit hesitant, and come on, we need to crack on with this.
And so what about analytical people then? I mean, it sort of does what it says on the tin,
it does,
doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean...
So lots of detail, want to see all the...
reserved, cautious...
data before they make a decision.
Yeah, reserved, cautious, thorough...
organised.
Quality, very important to them. Loves a system, like an order. Loves a project plan, right?
I like that as well.
Yeah, tend to be, much more likely to be more accurate, and because they're very thorough.
Yeah,
they're much more interested in making sure it is the right decision rather than just a decision.
Yeah.
Again, if we flip that around and we ask a room full of people, how might they be perceived by other people when they're demonstrating those traits? And they're likely to be seen perhaps as being
The devil's advocate type critique.
too critical, ask
Yeah.
too many questions.
Yeah.
But why are they asking questions? They're asking questions to uncover facts so they can support your idea. And this is a really important thing to remember here, is that all of these traits have an honourable intention.
Yeah.
You know, when an analytical is asking questions, they're asking questions because they want information to support your project.
Yeah, not to be difficult.
Yeah, not to be difficult.
Yeah.
They'll be seen to be difficult.
So a driver person might get frustrated with an analytical person because
not
they
being
just
fast
want to
enough.
make a decision.
Yeah, yeah.
They just want to get to the
Yeah.
result. And amiable and
Yeah.
analytical, they're probably quite good friends, aren't they?
But they can be. But if you're amiable, expressive, then maybe less so, because
Yeah.
you're very, very people. You're very emotional. You're very grounded in people and feelings, and may not pay much attention to
Yes.
facts. So this is
Yeah.
why the second preference really shapes how you show up to the world.
Yeah.
In general.
And so that expressive energy, again, that sort of speaks for itself.
Expressive,
but
yellow.
creative,
Yeah.
energetic, ideas.
I think spontaneity, creativity, being in the moment, comfortable with ambiguity, imaginative, loves ideas, loves brainstorming, loves to go with the flow.
Loves conversations and brainstorming.
Very much in the moment.
Yeah.
Let's just get this, and if someone starts introducing too much process,
Yeah.
kills it a bit.
Yeah.
But
Kills their
again,
vibe.
sorry?
Kills their vibe.
Kills their vibe, puts their fire out, right? Yeah, exactly. But if you flip that around again, and we were to ask people, when somebody is being very expressive, demonstrating those traits, how might they be seen?
Yeah.
Be seen. And
could
not
be
surprisingly, flippant. Yeah.
Yeah. No
All over
sort
the
of
place.
seriousness. Yeah. No order.
A bit chaotic.
Yeah.
You're changing your mind all the time. Left, right, this, that, yes, no. Can't you make a decision? Well, I've got new information. Yeah, well, couldn't you have thought that out before? Not really, no. They might appear to be other people to be a bit disorganised. Maybe they are disorganised. Again, we can't really talk about it in terms of right and wrong.
No.
Thank God for all these
You
different
need
types.
all of this in a team,
Yeah.
don't you? All of those things we've just described are essential.
Yeah. So thinking about these different descriptors, you might sort of start to think about, okay, which of the two do you most closely associate with? Again, I go back to this sort of very simple hunching idea.
Are you saying that by reflecting on the things that we've just spoken about, you can identify where your preferences might be, but also use that information to think about the people around you, whether that's in your team or your family?
By far and away, the best quality and the most useful thing about this knowledge is your ability to do what you've just described.
Yeah.
It's the ability to be in a room. Of course, it's useful to know the framework and know where you are. But you're in a room, you've joined a meeting, and you're trying to influence some people in that meeting, and you want to get your point across, and you need to bring them with you. And you start noticing what they're saying. You ask a question, or you notice the nature of their questions.
So you're listening to their language and observing what they're doing.
Yeah, the nature of the questions, the orientation of the question. Is it about detail?
Yeah.
Is it about searching evidence? It points very much to analytical. Is it more about relationships? How is this going to impact my people? Have you thought about have you asked X, Y, Z how they're feeling about this? What are your own feelings about it? If all these questions are very much to do with people, there's a pretty good indication there. They're probably more what we describe as more amiable, more people orientated, that green energy we described. The questions, for instance, are around why are we doing this? What's the point? And the way they're asking the question is very quick and snappy and short and to the point. There's a very clear indication there. They're probably quite direct and read. And then, if the questions are, how easy is this going to be implemented? Is
there another way of
doing this? Is there any flexibility with this, or how adaptable is this thing going to be? You kind of get a sense here that maybe they're a little bit of a rule breaker and they're not so wedded to doing it one way. and there's a bit of yellow energy there. So simple ways of trying to hunch. So think about this sort of 4 boxes, 2 above the line, 2 below the line. You might ask the question, does this person embrace risk? Or are they looking to avoid risk? Do they decide quickly, or are they much more methodical and slower in their decision making?
So deciding quickly would be the driver and expressive type
Exactly.
energy. And so less, slower in decision making would be the analytical and amiable.
Yes, that's it.
type
Yeah,
energy.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. One more hunching question there would be, are they more likely to sort of go with it and give it a go, try it out? Or is the person very wedded to the tried and tested?
Yeah.
So tried and tested would be...
Analytical, amiable.
Yeah.
Give it a go would be expressive and driver.
And driver direct, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put these hunching questions in the notes so you can go through this and work it out yourself, and we'll show you the little model. So a few additional hunching questions. You might say, would this person prefer to be buried in spreadsheets or spending time building relationships?
Yeah.
You can see where the orientation is again very
so
quickly.
the introvert
Yeah.
versus more extrovert
Yeah.
energy.
Okay. Are they likely to contain their emotions or express their emotions? So you very quickly see they're going towards more people or more introverted, sort of analytical energy.
And you can see how, armed with this information, you could very quickly get a measure of people in a room.
That's the point of it,
for
exactly.
example,
And
which is why it's nice. It's so simple.
So you might say, is this person, you're having a meeting with them? Do you notice they're very wedded to a structure and a discipline? Or is the person very, very open and adaptable and flexible?
Yeah. Are they asking lots of detailed questions, or are they hurrying the meeting
Yeah.
along to get to the conclusion?
Exactly, big picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these questions kind of can, if you could have that in your toolkit when
Yeah.
you're with people, you can't go around asking people to fill out these forms all the time to work out what style you are,
They give enough clues by the sounds
Yeah,
of
they give a
things.
lot of clues. That's the
Yeah.
point. Even by the way they, does the meeting start on time?
Yeah.
How do they organise the meeting?
How
They're
are notes taken?
How are notes
those
taken?
Big scribbles and pictures of
Are they
whatever
allowing
on
sort of
there.
chit chat?
Yeah.
You could get there's lots and lots of clues.
Yeah.
So that's the first. That's the really critical step is to be able to know yourself, have an understanding of yourself, recognise the styles of others, and then
Yeah.
the crucial bit is then armed with this information.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to get on the right side of somebody who is a more direct individual versus analytical versus amiable versus expressive?
Yeah. And I guess
we'll just
there's
finish off with that.
2 sides to that, isn't there? It's understanding how I might come across in my natural, non-adjusted style to that
Yeah.
person, and how I can adjust that style in order to engage them
Yeah.
more effectively.
Yeah, because you're right. You would need to first of all recognise that they're being perhaps potentially different to me,
Yeah.
and that means you have to exercise doing something in a slightly different way.
Yes. Yeah.
Which you might not feel overly comfortable about. That is a very good point. You've got to be able to exercise some difference there. In terms of applying this in a practical way, first step is to, if you're presenting, going to a meeting, know as much about the people in that meeting as possible.
Yeah.
You're not always going to know that, so sometimes you have to do this in real time.
Yes, yeah.
But if you do know a little bit about the person you're communicating with, as we've just been describing, do some hunching, get a sense of what they're like. Even if you're, you wouldn't necessarily... I would ask a leader of a team, and I'd say, tell me a little bit about your team and the characters in that team.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask them to say what behavioural styles they are.
No, but you'll get cues, won't
They'll
you?
give me cues and as to how they act and behave, and I'll be able to work that out myself.
And even in communication that you have beforehand on email, you can get a sense from the language and the style of written communication what somebody's preferences might be.
And then, so the second thing you need to do is then, based on that, think about how you might present to them, what information might they need first, second, third, what's the use of your language you use,
Yeah.
the way you're behaviourally communicating. Somebody who is very amiable want a little bit of chit-chat.
Yes.
Someone who is direct, one will get to the point.
Yeah.
Someone who is analytical would like you to lay out a clear agenda. Someone who is highly expressive wants you to engage and get them talking early.
And I guess if there's a room full of people, you've got to assume that there are all of the different
Always.
styles. So incorporate a bit that will resonate
Yeah.
with each of them.
Yeah, the ability to be able to sort of communicate of all four corners of your mouth. Think about it like that.
Yes.
You're trying to be able to appeal to, and that's what the best communicators do.
Yeah.
Best politicians, most popular American presidents over time. Not surprisingly, JFK, Reagan, Clinton.
Yeah.
All these folks are great communicators.
Yeah.
Obama.
Yes.
And they're actually able to communicate to a very wide spectrum of people, which makes them very popular. So, yeah, that's the next thing I would suggest you do. We'll put some, probably too much to explain here, but we'll put some notes on how you communicate with these four styles.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in summary, I think the key thing here is to recognise that people communicate in different ways, have different needs. And when you recognise somebody, when you feel yourself getting a little bit frustrated, just recognise the frustration is inside you.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about them. It's more about the fact you have a difference of communication style. And, we have lots of laughs in our workshops about what it's like, married couples, partners living together, and one person's got their suitcase packed and organised about 10 days before they go on holiday, and one person's doing it, literally an hour before.
You can literally see the styles expressing themselves in every corner of life.
Yeah. One person's like super tidy and meticulous. Another person's everything's complete chaos. One partner's a lot more empathic, and
one person in the supermarket packs their bags like forensically, the others just lob it in.
Yeah. Another person in terms of, they like a lot of affection, a lot of warmth. The other person perhaps doesn't as much because, one person's drawing their energy from themselves, more introvert.
Yes, yeah.
The more expressive person is drawing energy from someone else. So they like that human connection a bit more. This is a real fun
It's a
subject.
fascinating topic.
And it's much better, to be quite frank, and it's harder doing it kind of in a podcast setup. Doing it in a workshop is the funniest thing because everything we're describing here shows up in that workshop in bucket loads. Yeah. And teams go away with a better understanding of each other, and they go, "Oh, now I understand why you do what you do." Now, and they suddenly start becoming a lot more accepting of each other and learn to communicate with each other.
And actually, linking back to the episode we did on strengths, you can actually then allocate tasks and stuff according to preferences as well. If someone's detailed, get them doing the project planning.
Exactly. Play to strengths again. Exactly, yeah. Back to that, working with your natural energy. Yeah. Work within your nature, not against your nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Okay. Well, we'll put some, it's a bit complicated explaining it, but if you look at the visuals that go with this, you'll see.
Yeah, we'll put the power tool together and give you some of the practical tips that we've talked about, along with some more information about how to engage each of these styles. Yeah, and have fun with it. Just enjoy this and celebrate the differences. I mean, just imagine having a team of all the same people. What a boring life it would be. We work very well together. We're both very creative. Yeah. But it would be fair to say you're probably a little bit more organised than I am. Thank goodness. I like to get things done and drive things forward. I mean, we could be at opposite ends on that, but it seems to work. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Thank God for you, thank God for me, thank God for the world. Thank God for everybody, that's what I say. Exactly, absolutely. Until next time, enjoy. And as always, share it with people. You're doing them a favour. You're helping them develop. Self-education is where you can grow, you can learn, make yourself more valuable to the world. So do share with other people. Until next time. See you then.